Well, that's a very, very meaningful song, certainly. And depending on what aspect you look at, pray for me. I hope you take time occasionally to pray for your country. Because this issue is one for which you need to. Now, following the summon issued, is it a summon or an invitation? Well, the jury is still out there on that
invitation
to President Muhammadu Buhari over the state of insecurity in the country by the National Assembly. The president's personal assistant on social media announced that the president will address a joint session of the National Assembly last Thursday, but clearly it never happened. However, the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, has come out to say that the National Assembly has no constitutional power to summon President Muhammadu Buhari. Well, to discuss with us this morning, we have Mr. John Oloyede with us in the studio, as well as Ezekiel Nyaitog, who joins us virtually from Uyo. Gentlemen, thank you for being here this morning. Well, Mr. Oloyede, let me begin with you. First of all, were you disappointed?
By Mr. President's default?
Yes.
Well, I'll say I was disappointed, but not the way most of my other colleagues are, the angle they're looking at it from. It was a moral breach. It's not a legal breach. Okay. Because the president gave his word. I mean, he was invited. I will take it that he was invited, not summoned. But when you use the word summon, it's like an adversarial thing.
Yeah.
But APC is in power. They are the executive. APC holds Congress. And so I believe it was an invitation. I won't call it a summon. Because in legal parlance, when you talk of summon, it's like a command. It's like an order. So the president voluntarily said, oh, I'm coming to address you on a particular day. And he defaulted. That's a moral thing. When you give your word, you keep it, especially at that level.
Yeah.
Now, whether the National Assembly had the power or the right to do that under the Constitution, because I've had so many colleagues insinuating that, oh, this is akin to a constitutional breach that could warrant impeachment proceedings. I don't think that is right. The president was wrong to have given his word, and he didn't keep his word. But he did not commit any breach of any law. The section of the Constitution that talks about attendance at the National Assembly regarding the president, I think section 67(1), gives him a discretion. Says he may attend, meaning he could decide to go or decide not to go. And he could go and decide not to answer questions. Now, bearing in mind the fact that we have the same party as executive, the same party at the holding the legislature, there should not have been any bad blood in respect of this matter.
Okay, you are also a lawyer, Mr. Oloyede.
Yes.
Was the National Assembly out of order to invite him to come and talk to? Well, talking to them it's like talking to the nation, because they represent us. Were they out of order?
The National Assembly was not out of order. That's why I said it was a mutually beneficial thing. He was invited. I don't agree that he was summoned. When the National Assembly has to issue summons, it becomes another thing. Usually, maybe they are investigating a crime, corruption, or whatever. That's when the issue of summons comes in. So he was invited. They had visited him. And then he then volunteered and said, look, I will come in and address you. So they were not out of order to have invited him. He was out of order to have breached his word, not a law.
Well, Mr. Nyaitog, let me begin with you. For you, legality or morality, which one takes the cake?
Of course, I don't even think of legality. I'm not even interested in morality. I am more interested in necessity. All things are lawful, but not all things are expedient. We are in real trying times. We are in real hard times. And if the representatives of the people, if Mr. President has refused to do a national broadcast, and Each time the assembly members go home, the people are asking them questions. So they come back as a collective representative of the people. And they said, Mr. President, please, can we have a tete-a-tete, so to speak? Like my brother has said, it wasn't a summon, it was just an invitation. After that invitation, which to start with, I even thought Mr. President would have said, come, National Assembly, can I come and dialogue with you? Can we have a brainstorming session? Can I come and tell you what is going on, what this is all about? And if he failed to do that, because from time to time, I see the Speaker of the House and the Senate President go to Aso Rock. I see them, and they can only go there on the invitation of Mr. President, okay, or on acceptance of the invitation of Mr. President. So if the National Assembly said, Mr. President, we are in real dire times, and things are really, we really need to give our people an answer. You know, not from, you know, if the report that this man said is not the same thing as when they said, Mr. President talking to you directly. So I think that, number one, it was necessary. Number two, Mr. President really, not Mr. President, the people that work with Mr. President should please go and check the meaning of that word integrity. It seems they don't really understand. You saw this man to us on account, on the back of that word, that single word, integrity. But every step you take, you just negate the meaning of integrity. There was a story of a king who said that if somebody was caught...
One moment, Mr. Yato. Just one moment, Mr. Yato. We'll go to break and allow you to continue in this trajectory of the conversation. But before we do that, let me let you know that we already have another legal practitioner with us, Godi Uwazurike, in the studio. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Summon, invitation, perhaps depends on what side of the divide you are. But clearly, from all that we have heard so far, sounded more like an invitation. Well, as I said, we have three gentlemen with us this morning, and we have heard two of them. Well, Chief Wazirike is also here with us. It is interesting, you know, what we have heard so far. Okay, let me ask you the same question. Legality or morality? For Mr. Loyede, it's a morality issue. For Mr. Nyaito, who joins us from his virtually, it is not legality, it's not morality, it is necessity. What is it for you?
Well, it's a mixture of both legality and morality. Let me just put it bluntly. The House, the legislature has the powers to summon anybody.
Invite.
Well, no, well, invite. Pure and anybody. Whether the person honors it or not depends on the status. The persons exempted are the president and the vice president, that's for National Assembly. For the states, the governor and deputy governor, from arrest. Otherwise, any other body, any person can be arrested, including the Chief Justice, if you fail to honor the invitation of the House. And they can invite you for anything whatsoever. They can even invite you to ask you, how are you? Did you sleep well? Because such things are political issues. But in this case, the morality is that the nation wants to see Mr. President, wants to hear Mr. President. We don't have an elusive president. We want to be reassured by the man who is sitting in that office that all is going to be well. Presently, people are suffering. Presently, the roads are not safe. Presently, are not safe in their farm. As somebody said, you didn't get the permission of the army before you go to farm. Another person said, you did not pay the bandit, the Boko Haram or ISWAP. You didn't pay them their money. So if Mr. President still thinks we're important, he is bound by all things to come out to address the nation. In other climes, that same day that news broke, whether it was 43, whether it was 78, whether it was 68 or 112, Mr. President will be on air, convey his condolences in person. He's also expected to visit that site. I'm not sure Mr. President has visited any war front since he came in 2015.
Well, actually, he has. I think that was last year or the year before.
Which war front? I know of Zamfara.
In the same, no. I think it was in the same Borno state when there was such a fracas as well. I remember that he visited.
The one I remember is Zamfara. He wore army uniform.
No.
That day,
there was one.
And then he visited with the service chiefs, and they were all there, and he gave a warning to bandits. But then we are waiting to see the general coming out in full force. Right now, if you are from any of those Borno state areas and you still believe the governor that Borno is safer today than it was 2015, I think something should be done to your head. You can't travel on the road. Even the governor himself cannot travel.
He's been attacked several times.
Well, Mr. Lee, there was something you said the other time about this morality, beg your pardon, legality question. Well, you've heard Chief say that it is the president or anyone at all can be invited. Because I also referenced one of the sections of the Constitution, section 88 and 89. I think that's the one that he's relying upon beyond the section 67 that you cited the other time. One of the questions a number of people will be asking would be, in the event that any public officer that was invited by the National Assembly does not honor the invitation, what happens?
No, like Chief said, there are legal parameters. If the National Assembly invites any other person, and the person does not honor the invitation, they have the right under the law to issue a bench warrant to get the person arrested and brought before the National Assembly to answer questions or to be sanctioned. So it's not, but because of the immunity clauses covering the president, the vice president, governors, and deputy governors, in their own, with respect to those offices, where they don't honor the invitation, there is nothing the House can do, the National Assembly can do, because they cannot be sanctioned while they are in office. When they become private citizens, action can continue. So the law is very clear about that. I am not saying in all instances people can disobey the invitation or the summon of the National Assembly. When they do, different actions will follow.
Okay. Now Ezekiel, some say that this is all a storm and a teacup because the executive is APC, the legislature is APC. So what exactly is going on?
You see, what bothers me in all these narratives is the fact that we are almost joining politicians to have discussions that really don't hit on the substance. What is governance? The Constitution is very clear that the security and welfare of the people shall, I'm not a lawyer, luckily we have two lawyers, eminent lawyers there, shall be the primary purpose of government. Shall. But we do so much of politics, and not governance. At a time like this, I expect that people should know that insecurity is in every part of this country. And every single conversation, at this point in time, we should close ranks, leave partisan polls, and come together. At this time, I remember Mr. President saying that at Chatham House, that as a general, he will lead from the front. What's so difficult in Mr. Look, the National Assembly is basically APC in the majority. Mr. President can easily have an understanding. I am just coming to present. I don't want to answer questions if it comes to that. And he just goes there and reads his address. My question is it that Mr. President really, honestly, sincerely has nothing to tell the nation, and as a good Muslim, he does not want to lie? Could that be the position? Because I've seen him. It's not that he's indisposed. I've seen him. And let me hit where let me land where I started from before. There was this king who said that nobody should go out after 6 o'clock. 2 days after, some people rushed his child to him and told him, please tell your child to stay back because he shouldn't disobey the law. And the king asked what happened. They said he was found outside at 8 p.m. So we brought him back for you to. He said, okay, no problem, go. The next day, he summoned the meeting of the whole community and said that somebody had disobeyed the law. He called his son out, and his son was publicly executed. He said it's the price of integrity, that a man of integrity must be a man of honor and a man of his words. And the way Mr. President says something and people just discard it and throw it out, even if for any reason Mr. President didn't want to appear, the easiest thing he could have done was just send a memo, sorry, certain issues have arisen that need my direct intervention. Please, can you give me some time so that we can reschedule the visit? That rescheduling can just be for God knows how long. But for him to give his word and then allow Malami, the Attorney General, to come and give us flimsy explanations, and even me, a layman, can read certain sections and understand, and how the Attorney General tells us that Mr. President cannot be invited. And then he now says that he cannot discuss issues of national security before the public. So the National Assembly has become public. I think that the National Assembly should demand an apology from them, because they cannot be public. They are the representative of the collective will of the people. I think we need to interrogate this about governance earlier or sooner than later.
Well, interesting that you mentioned that part of invitation, because I don't know if a letter was sent that the president would have responded to, but that's another issue altogether. Now, gentlemen, Alero started by talking about the fact that both arms of government are controlled, so to speak, by the APC. Now, many people believe that this conversation about whether or not the president should honor this invitation began with the APC governor saying that the president should not, honor this invitation. Now, the word out there is that if the president honors the invitation, then it leaves room for their states' houses of assembly to begin to summon them willy-nilly.
It's unfortunate that we keep going back and forth on this matter. My own thinking really is it's another distraction from people in government. The issue, the matter of the moment is really insecurity. People are being killed all over Nigeria. I was reading a joke yesterday about people traveling during this Christmas season to Delta Edo area, that when you are coming, come with your ransom. Look at yourself, you know how much you are worth, so that as you are passing through, you pay your ransom to those who will be waiting on the highway to collect ransom from you, so that you are not actually kidnapped. Now, the Yorubas have a saying that when a matter has degenerated to the point where you should be crying, you just start laughing. That's why the comic relief we enjoy in Nigeria today is we're in this situation because we cannot, our tears have dried up. And what the government does is to distract us from the real issues that we should be facing, which is that we are no longer free as citizens of this country to walk free, to associate freely. We cannot go to the farm. Those who are farmers can't go to the farms anyhow. In Lagos here, was it in Abuja, the retired military man, Air Vice Marshal or somebody, he went out jogging in the morning and he was attacked seriously. And the admonition is, if you have to go and jog in the morning, make sure wait for daylight. In Abuja, the seat of power. So my take is this: all these discussions about the president should go to the National Assembly, should go and address the National Assembly, should not go, the Malami saying this and that, is just to kill the issue of the moment.
But there is no way, Mr. Loye, there is no way anyone will ignore the real issue here, because just as you said, people are being killed on a daily basis. I mean, there's very, very high sense of insecurity. Security operatives might argue and say that the level of insecurity is not as serious as it's been made to look at, but the high sense of insecurity is crippling enough. Now, exactly. So, Mr. Eyato, you're a politician, at least you've played in that field for a while. The question about the APC governors making this recommendation, for instance, saying this about the National Assembly, beg your pardon, about the president's visit, I think the reason a number of people are wondering is, look, the insecurity issues we are having, they are local. So what could be wrong with a governor being invited by his State House of Assembly to come and answer a few questions? Just because you don't have a State of the Nation address, you don't have a State of the State address, occasionally have this interaction with the people who represent the people that you're governing. What could be wrong with that?
I think it serves us right as Nigerians. These people didn't come in there to serve you. They didn't come in there to work for you. So any attempt to summon them or put them under certain pressures, you are more of an irritant to them. The day that we start to elect people who see service as the basis for seeking public office, they will understand the word accountability. Right now, if you ask your governor to account for you, except for 1, 2, governors that really have their heads well on their shoulders, they wonder who you are. The audacity for you to question, do you know who I am? Governors are not chief executives, they are monarchs. That is why they want to tell Mr. President, you are more or less, demystifying your office. How can you appear before the national? Now, when you do this, those other boys are going to be expecting us to come and appear before them. These are monarchs. These are not chief executives who must appear before their board, not even if time lasts for a while and there's no board meeting. They even want to call one because they want to show them the scorecard of how much they have performed. They want to show them the dreams they have. They want to show them their plans and everything. But these guys are in for the paraphernalia of the office. They are in for the power of the office. They are there to do and undo. They are not, do you know I'm the governor? So I think that it serves us well. I think that Nigerians should start to open their eyes and their ears to understand what government is all about. That governance and politics are two different things. We have too many politicians in power and we don't have Democrats and chief executives on the chief executive seat. And it's sad. We need to learn our lessons now.
All right. Chief Nwaziri, you want to respond to the same question?
Well, the way I see people in power in Abuja, they are more interested in power than in governance.
I'm talking about the governors now, the ones who are the ones that many people believe. The news on the street is that they're the ones who propose to the president that he shouldn't make their appearance because their own state houses of assembly would also begin to summon them or invite them to use the...
As it is in Abuja, so it is in all the states. In other words, if the governor feels that it is humiliating for me to be invited, you, Mr. President, why should you go? They can convince Mr. President because they show him that he is a god, and the god does not answer unless he wants to answer. The governors are also seen as gods in their own states. And so the image of the all-powerful God must be maintained. You are governor of a state. You impose the speaker and all the principal officers on the legislature. How dare anybody say anything you don't want to be said? As it is today, the governor coughs, the state shakes. They're asking Mr. President to follow the same pattern. Mr. President is the oldest person in power in this country today. So I can't see a governor coming to convince him. What is it he has not seen? President Muhammad Buhari has been a governor of the old Islam, Borno, Yobe, and so on, and Adamawa, and not his governor. Now, you notice also that he has been a minister, and this is his second time of coming. So there's nothing he has not seen. But if the welfare and security of the people is actually the primary function of this government, they don't have to wait for anybody to tell them to answer. It is a burden.
Okay.
It is a duty to reassure us that you are doing something. People talked of removal of service chiefs. People talked of rejigging of the military architecture. People talked of many things. He, Mr. President, should be in the forefront. Being a elusive president, being an invisible president cannot be his tag.
Well, Chief, let me just stay with you, because we're talking about the relationship between the legislature and the executive. Why do we have three arms of government? Is it not so that we can have checks and balances? So why all this quarrel about one calling the other to come and account for what it has been doing?
Well, you know, in a dictatorship, for example, military
Which we
government,
don't have.
Which we don't have. And you starting with the military government, you only have two. Judiciary and executive. Executive also makes laws. In a pure democracy, those three arms are separated. And if they are not independent, then there is a big failure. As it is today, the Chief Justice is the head of the judiciary. He sits whenever there is a dispute between states, between federal government and the states, and between legislature and the executive. Now you have the executive, which is there to implement the laws made by the legislature. The legislature has an upper hand in all these things. Legislature confirms the Chief Justice. Legislature can also remove the president. Legislature can call anybody to order, otherwise known as oversight function. And if there is no oversight function, the legislature is a rubber stamp. And in this case, our present legislature has all the weapons to emphasize that it is independent. For instance, they invite you, you are not the president, but you shun them. All they have to do is wait for you. If there is any budget coming up, oh, the budget for ministry XXX, they throw it away until you respect the legislature. But in this case, they do it as party affair. You know each other, you know, like the speaker today, I'm sure he's now enemy number one in APC circles. So as big as Nigeria is, without the separation of powers, without the respect for the individual arms of government, this country cannot be called a democracy.
Okay. Well, Mr. Loyede, let me come back to you here. To stay on the issue just as you have proposed, one of the main recommendations that have been hobnobbed around for a while is to give a little more prominence to the role of traditional rulers. The Senate President had repeated that a good number of times. And then the President had that meeting with governors, with APC governors, and proposed to them, use traditional rulers to gather local intelligence for security operatives. How far-reaching do you think that will go, given that the powers, if I can use that, of the traditional rulers themselves are pretty much limited?
Well, it's easier said than done. It's so easy for a politician to say, oh, we can use traditional rulers to perform in this sector and that sector. But the issue really is, what we operate presently is a constitutional democracy. And in a constitutional democracy, powers and duties are well delimited. In the constitution we have in the country today, traditional rulers are nowhere to be found. There are no provisions regulating them. Now, the governors of each state can hire and fire any traditional ruler at any point in time. So you have
no matter how highly placed.
No matter how highly placed. The Emir of Kano.
And that's not the first time.
That is a very the office of the Emir of Kano is a first class. It's not just first class in the whole of Nigeria, but it was removed like like air. So you have a situation where the political class will say, now, in many states, even in the West, we have a total dilution. They have diluted the traditional institutions in such a way that virtually every street now has an Oba. And you have first, second, third, fourth class Obas. How do you begin to invest such persons who were chosen by the political class to start handling issues of security when those who appointed them can conveniently tell them, oh, this person that has been arrested, release him, he's one of us. So, you see, you cannot speak in vacuum. You can't speak outside the law as it is today, which is that Nigeria as a democracy, as a federation, requires serious amendment to the constitution. Until we do that, we're not going anywhere.
Well, Mr. Nyatok, as we say, all whatever is local. All politics is local. All business is local. All pretty much everything is local. But where are the local governments?
It's one question that we really need to sit down as Nigerians to ask ourselves. We really don't understand what government is all about. We don't. You see, the closest unit to the people, that's why when I advocate social governance as a bottom to top, people-centered approach to governance, with the primary purpose of bringing the citizens out of poverty. The time has come when we need to revisit our governance system and structure and adopt social governance, where the most important persons is going to be the local government administration. They are the people that meet, that interface with the people. You cannot talk of bringing the people out of poverty without the system, the structure that relates directly to the people.
Okay, well, Mr. Yato, we're running out of time, but I'd like to also take the comment of Chief Wazirike on this matter before we go. So, this is where we are now. We have talked about, states, their role in all of this quagmire, and local governments and all of that. What should we be doing? The conversations around executive legislation, the legislative relationships now is pretty much about security. What should we be doing now? Just about 30 seconds.
I think they should involve the people. They should involve the the local boys. They know who is who. The only problem is to know who is an errand boy of the politician and who is not.
Okay.
And then state police. Whatever you do, please let us have state police. It's so important that as long as you keep on ignoring it, we're in trouble.
Well, that conversation is, it's varied. We're not likely to get all of it today.
No.
Okay. No. Well, but I have to thank you, gentlemen, for being here this morning to have this conversation with us. Chief Godwin Wazirike is a legal practitioner as well as Mr. John Olede. Thank you so much for your time. Mr. Ezekiel Yaetok is founder at Nigeria First. He joined us virtually from Uyo in Akwa Ibom State. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this morning for this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're back in a moment to take on another issue. Do stay with us.